Your savings account is likely robbing you. And look, I know that sounds dramatic, but please hang with me because by the end of this video, I think you're going to look at your savings account very differently than you do right now. As a certified financial planner, one of the most common things I see with people our age working towards building a strong financial foundation is that they're doing everything right. They're budgeting, saving consistently, doing their best to be responsible with their money, but still falling behind in one little category. And a big reason why is that their cash is just sitting in the wrong place, quietly losing value every single day. So today, I want to sit down and talk about why that happens, how much cash you actually need on hand, and where to move it all so it starts working for you instead of against you. So let's start with the real enemy here, inflation. You likely already know what inflation is. It always dominates the media headlines, but for those who don't, inflation is the increase in the price of goods and services over time. That's simply the textbook definition. But what this means is that the dollars in your pocket today are worth less and less as time goes on. So let's look at an example. A grocery run that cost you $100 a few years ago might cost you $110 or $115 today. That's inflation at work. And the way that we measure it in the US is through something called the Consumer Price Index. So you might hear it referred to as the CPI. At the end of 2025, inflation came in at 2.7%, meaning that on average, everything that you buy got 2.7% more expensive over the course of the year. Inflation doesn't just affect what you pay at the register, and I alluded to this earlier, but it also affects what your money is actually worth. We call this purchasing power risk. And if your money isn't growing at least as fast as inflation, your dollars are losing ground every single day. So, a quick fun fact about me, I'm a huge fish tank nerd and I have over 75 gallons worth of aquariums in my home. So, let's think about this like a fish tank. Imagine you have a fish tank with a tiny crack at the bottom. You walk by it every single day, you're looking at your fish, you're swimming around, everything looks fine. You have no idea that anything is wrong, but over time that tank is slowly draining one little bitty drip at a time. You come back in a couple weeks and the water level has dropped. And that's exactly what inflation does to your cash. It doesn't happen all at once, but it slowly drips and trickles over time until you realize that there's not as much water in the tank as there used to be. So that's problem number one. Inflation is real, it's consistent, and it's silently eroding the value of your dollars. But let's look at problem number two. Your savings account is likely making it worse. The national average interest rate on a traditional savings account right now is about 0.2% annually. So, what does that mean? Let's just for easy round dollars, say you have $10,000 sitting in a standard savings account. So, let's say you leave that $10,000 in your savings account and don't touch it for an entire year. At the end, you would have earned $20 in interest. Meanwhile, inflation is running at about 2.7%. At least that's what it was for 2025. So that means that your $10,000 needs to grow to $10,270 just to maintain the same purchasing power that it had at the start of the year. But your savings account only made $20. You did not break even, you didn't tread water, you actually lost $250 in real purchasing power, and your bank handed you $20 and called it a win. So I see this all the time working with clients as a certified financial planner. People are doing everything right, as I mentioned earlier, budgeting, saving consistently, being responsible, but then we look at where their cash is actually parked, and it's just in a standard savings account at their big bank earning nearly nothing. It's one of the most common and fixable money mistakes out there, and I want to talk about in a little bit how we fix that. But before we talk about how to fix it, we need to talk about how much cash you should actually have on hand in the first place, because this matters more than people think. The first financial foundation that you need to build is your emergency fund. Before investments, before paying down debt, it should be your first priority because it's your safety net. These dollars in an emergency fund exist so that when life happens, and believe me, it will, you don't have to go into debt or liquidate investments to cover it. So, how much is enough? The academic answer, and the one that I tell my clients, is that if you're a single income household, one job, one earner, you want 6 months of expenses saved up. If you're a dual income household, 2 people, 2 incomes, 3 months of expenses is generally enough because you have a built-in backup if one person loses their job. So again, notice I said expenses, not income. Your emergency fund should not be based on what you make, it's based on what you actually spend every month. Rent, groceries, utilities, subscription, car payment. Add it up, multiply it by either 3 or 6, that's your number. So I gave you the academic answer, but that being said, everyone also has what I like to call a sleep at night number. So let's say that when you put your head on the pillow at the end of the night, you still don't totally feel comfortable with that 3 to 6 month expense number that we just talked about. Maybe your sleep at night number is a little bit higher, and therefore your emergency fund is also a little bit higher. I think that having a little more is totally fine, but at the same time, you want to be careful not to overdo it. Now, speaking in the same vein of not overdoing it and having too much cash, I've had a few clients ask, is it more cash always safer? And I totally get the instinct. It feels safer to have more cash sitting on the sidelines and not having the volatility of the market, but here's the thing. There is no such thing as no risk. There is no such thing as a risk-free place to put your money. Even cash carries risk. We already talked about the purchasing power risk, inflation silently munching away at what your dollars can actually buy, but there's also institutional risk to consider. The FDIC insures bank deposits up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. Now, while this is a problem that most of us don't have to worry about right now, if a bank did go under, you would lose whatever you had in excess of that $250,000 threshold. My point is, keeping excess cash does not eliminate risk. It really just trades one type of risk for another. So I recommend dialing your emergency fund, keep it where it belongs, and don't let the illusion of safety cost you real money that you could be getting in investments. So we talked about emergency fund, and there's another category of cash that should absolutely exist. I'm not here to tell you to invest everything and keep nothing liquid because that would be irresponsible advice, quite frankly. I'm talking about cash that you're saving for a specific near-term goal. Early in my career, I was saving for two big things at the same time. Number one, a house down payment, and number two, an engagement ring. Both of those required me to have cash on hand at a specific moment, and I couldn't have that money locked up in the market because I needed it on a specific timeline. But here's the key. That cash still shouldn't be sitting in a dead account earning you next to nothing. It should be working while it waits, and we're going to talk about exactly where to put it in just a second. But one last thing before we get to the solution. I want to give you a framework for how to think about your saving priorities, because if you're just getting started, it matters what order you do things in. Priority number one is what we just talked about. Build your emergency fund. This should be first, full stop. Before anything else, this is your foundation. Priority number two, and this is important, pay off your debt. And I mean all of it outside of your mortgage. Car loans, credit cards, student loans, get them out. Anything carrying high interest debt while trying to invest, it's like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain open. Priority number three is investing for your future. And we'll cover the full savings and investing priority in a future video because it totally deserves its own conversation. But for now, emergency fund first, then debt, then we'll build from there. So back to solving the actual problem. You've got your emergency fund number, you know what you're saving for. So now, where do we put this cash so it's beating inflation instead of losing to it? I want to introduce to you two solid options. Option number one, and you've probably heard of this, is a high yield savings account. These are typically offered by online banks. Think Ally, Capital One 360, SoFi. I could really go on and on. You probably have seen commercials for these, but because they don't have the overhead of having physical branch locations, they can afford to pay you a significantly higher interest rate than your traditional big box bank. They're simple to open and they're a great starting point, especially if you're just getting started building your financial foundation. The only downside is that they sometimes have monthly limits on how often you can move money out. The good news is the limit is typically pretty high, typically around 5 to 6 withdrawals per month, and ideally you're not taking money out of your emergency fund super often. It should be there for emergencies. Option number two is a little bit more advanced, but it's what I personally use. A money market mutual fund inside of a brokerage account. I personally use this strategy because I want all my accounts at one place. I personally use a bank with a physical location. Because of that physical location, they do not offer a quality high yield savings account. So this is the next best thing. So how does this strategy actually work? A money market mutual fund is a type of investment that holds short-term, low-risk securities. Think things like treasury bills and short-term bonds that pay you a yield that typically competes or exceeds what you'd find in a high-yield savings account. These funds are designed to maintain a steady value while generating income, and while they're not trying to grow dramatically, you're not investing in stocks here. This fund is specifically a place to park your cash to beat inflation. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what fund to buy, and I promise it's not a cop out. I want to teach you to fish instead of just handing you one. The best money market fund today might not be the best one 6 months from now. Rates move and these different funds adjust their offerings. So instead of giving you a ticker that might be outdated by the time that you see this video, let me tell you what to look for. The first thing you want to look for is a strong yield. Compare it to current high yield savings account rates. Go to those online banks that we talked about earlier on their website, compare it to what they're currently offering. It should be competitive or better. The second thing that you want to look for is a low expense ratio. This is the fee that the fund charges for managing everything in the background, and it directly eats into that interest rate yield. It should be as low as possible. Third, make sure it's actually a money market fund, not a bond fund. Bond funds fluctuate in value, and that's not what you want for your cash. You want stability with interest and not the volatility of a bond fund. If you already have a brokerage account, this option keeps everything in one place and sets you up naturally to invest the money that goes beyond your emergency fund and near-term goals, which again, we'll cover in another video. There are other places that you could park your cash to earn yield, but for this video, I believe that these are the two easiest ways to allow your cash to beat inflation. I want to leave you with this. Please don't let this be another video that you've watched or listened to and just forgot about. I want to challenge you with one action item. Go look up what your current savings account is actually yielding right now, right after this video. Pull up your savings account, find the interest rate, and compare it to what a high yield savings account is offering. If the interest rate is lower than what you know you need to typically beat inflation, you'll know exactly what to do next. The information is out there, these accounts are free to open, and the only thing standing between you and your money working harder for you is knowing where to look. And now you do. If this video helped you see your savings account a little bit differently, it would mean the world if you subscribed. I put out content like this regularly for people in their 20s who are striving to build a strong financial foundation, and there's a whole lot more coming in the near future. It's been Q Hall, and until next time, enjoy the fog.